Hope you're doing well. It is Wednesday, November 2nd, just before 3 p.m. I'm your host, Boiler Dowd, and this is another QuickCast, a little bit of a dive into some stats, some facts, some things that we might have a misperception about as Purdue heads into the Iowa game. Purdue, of course, coming off of a bye week. Before that, coming off of getting thrashed, getting beaten up pretty good by Wisconsin. But before I dig in too deep, let me thank our sponsors. Thanks to our pals at Martin Vintage, martinvintage.com. Head over there, enter Boiled at checkout, get 15% off. How easy is that? You'll get a great, soft, comfortable Purdue t-shirt or sweatshirt with some heritage logos on it. Right now, they've got one they're featuring that's got Pete on the, I think you can choose, I think it's on the back. Actually, no, the sweatshirt's on the front. It's an old-timey Pete from like the 1950s with the engineering fountain and the bell tower on there. And it's got a block P on the sleeves. Really cool. And then when you're on campus tomorrow, Purdue plays at noon. It's going to be tough to get over to AJ's before, but afterwards, celebrate the victory, hopefully, at AJ's on Vine. EatAJ's.com if you want to order ahead while you're in the stadium. Then head over there, have some mac and cheese bites, some funnel cake fries, some Italian-style beef, a beer, watch some other games. It's one of the best things after a game day at Purdue to gather some football, gather some college football, and there's no place better on campus than AJ's for doing that. So, let me talk a little bit about a couple things. First off, there's the idea of Bromvember, the concept of Bromvember. Purdue fans talk about it all the time. You know what? Before I even get to that, John Younger brings up something. Thanks for tuning in live, John. He says, it better not rain the entire game. Right now, the weather forecast is no bueno, as they say in my native tongue. And this has been an Achilles heel for Jeff Brom teams. Rainy, consistent rain games have been trouble. I can only think of one where Purdue was somewhat successful. And that could be a great equalizer for Iowa, could help Purdue's passing offense get slowed way down. I'm going to talk a little bit about statistics and what these offenses and defenses look like compared head to head. But yeah, that rain might be the biggest story as Purdue gets ready for this game. It looks like it's going to start raining either right at kickoff or right after kickoff. It's going to be 60-something degrees, maybe low 60s and rainy, which isn't horrible, but it's going to be a little windy too. So I'm hoping for the weather to change, but if it doesn't, it's another chance for Jeff Brom to slay one of his dragons, which is crappy weather. I know he doesn't like it, but our pal Aiden O'Connell's got to figure some things out. Of course, Purdue leans heavily, of course, on passing. They're one of the best passing offenses in the league. Let's talk a little bit about these stats heading into the game, shall we? Might be a little dry for you, but I've got a couple points I want to get at. First one, like I said, pass offense. Purdue is second in the league, 314 yards passing a game. And I think a lot of Purdue fans feel like Purdue's offense really hasn't been in rhythm for an entire game yet. I would say that's probably true. Save the Indiana State game. They haven't put 4 quarters together where the offense was just clicking. Generally, it's about 2 quarters a game where the offense looks really good. And the other 2, they kind of look like they're, I don't want to say going through the motions, but nothing looks the same in those middle 2 quarters generally. And Iowa, their pass offense is not good. 13th in the league, 155 yards a game. Their quarterback, Petrus, really hasn't figured a lot out, even in his advanced age for college football. He's struggling to find consistency. In total defense, let's look at this. Iowa, I said they're one of the best teams in the country defensively. They're third overall in allowing points in the conference, 15.8 points allowed. Purdue is 10th, allowing 25.5 points. They not only give up points, they give them up in chunks, as we saw versus Nebraska. And then in total offense, and just the ability for the team to put points on the board, Purdue is 5th in the conference, averaging 32.8 points a game, and Iowa is 14th. averaging 16.4 points a game. If you watch them, it looks like sometimes it's a bit of a miracle that they're going to get into the teens at all. Iowa's offense really struggles to find rhythm over and over. A lot of times teams like that are really solid on the run. Well, let's check out that rush offense. Purdue is 10th in the league, 130 yards a game, thanks mostly to Devin Maccabee's advent, his coming of age quickly before our eyes, becoming Purdue's number one running back, as King Doru has struggled with injury almost the entire season. Doru is again out. It sounds like Downing will be a game time decision. So Purdue's going to have a little bit of struggle there. The more depth, the better at running back is always a good thing. But Maccabee will be starting again. And then Iowa's offense, their rushing offense, is 13th in the league, averaging just 93.5 yards a game. Usually that's Iowa's bread and butter, right? Most Iowa teams, the really good versions of the Iowa teams, can run the ball consistently. Iowa struggled there too. Now, on rush defense, Iowa's very, very good. And this is if it's raining and Purdue looks to run the ball because O'Connell can't get a good grip on the ball or whatever, Iowa's 4th in the league, averages 93 yards. Purdue is 7th in the league, averages 110 yards. The funny thing is Purdue's rush defense has looked great, especially in between the tackles. Purdue's defensive front has been strong. I would say it's still Purdue's strength. Purdue has some guys that are still a little banged up in the defensive backfield. That ability to stop the long ball has been something that Brom says they've been focusing on. I don't know if that's a huge concern coming into this one just because Iowa doesn't tend to stretch teams, but we'll see. I think Iowa's going to bring the best version of themselves in this game. I've told you this game worries me as much as any game this season simply because motivation. You have two of Iowa's best offensive players from last year are playing for Purdue, of course. Charlie Jones, one of the best receivers in America, has been doing big things for Purdue. And then Tyrone Tracy, of course. Tyrone Tracy, according to Brom, is going to maybe see more time at running back again due to injuries to Doru and the walk-on fullback. So one more statistical category I wanted to talk about was pass offense, pass defense. Purdue's 2nd in the league. Oh, actually, I talked about that. Pass defense, pardon me. Iowa's 4th there, too, and they allow 172 yards. Purdue is 9th in pass defense because of those chunk plays that I talked about earlier. That's a big issue for Purdue. And as Brom said, it's not acceptable for the defensive backs to perpetually be running to catch up with wide receivers. And they kind of been playing catch up for the last few games, especially. Nebraska exposed Purdue. Wisconsin exposed Purdue's defensive backfield even. And Purdue has to improve to get anywhere near the season that I was hoping for this season. Of course, Purdue is playing for bowl eligibility. They've got 5 wins so far. This game is a pivotal one. It's absolutely essential if they want to win the West. To get to Illinois, who is looks like the best team in the West, Purdue's got to beat Iowa first. And then those two teams, the next 2 weeks are extremely important. So we're looking at just that game. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk a little bit about the dry statistical analysis of the game. It's all stuff you probably knew if you've watched college football that much, but something to look at. One interesting thing that I found was just kind of reading up, listening the last couple of days. You guys remember Riley Moss, who was a cornerback for Iowa as a freshman. He got he was exposed, honestly. I think that was versus Anthony Mahungu. So Moss is probably a 5th-year guy using his COVID year. But he called that a wake-up call for him as a player. Now he's a very respected cornerback. He's starting. I believe he didn't play last year versus Purdue. But that game and a lot of games Purdue has played, they've been able to exploit Iowa using the deep ball and having guys get behind the defensive backs. Iowa has a pretty solid defensive backfield this year. They have guys all over the field that can hit hard. This is going to be a game that really tests Jeff Brom and his play calling ability. A lot of concern that I have this year is when Brom believes another defense is very good, he tends to call a more conservative game. Now you have that coupled with the rain. That doesn't sound great to me, but we'll have to see. Okay, so let me look at a couple more bigger picture things. I wanted to talk about the first one is the idea, the the term Bromvember. A lot of people say this because Jeff Brom teams are just so strong in November. And I wanted to really look into this a little bit deeper and see if the legend is as great as the facts here. Let's go through that. In 2017, Bromvember was very good. Purdue was 3-1 after starting that season relatively slowly. They needed that just to get to 6 wins. A lot of heroics in those games, of course. 2018, Bromvember was not what you may have remembered as. They were only 2-2. I'm not counting 2020 for the record in this analysis because that was such a weird season and there was no normal rhythm all year. So 2019, they were 2-2 again, far from dominant. And then 2021, last year, they were 3-1. Jay talked about this on the Handsome Hour, how important it is for Purdue to go 3-1 in November. Purdue is playing their, I don't want to say weakest part of the schedule because you've got Iowa and Illinois, but there's games here that Purdue should be able to do pretty well because of just simple matchups. Purdue needs to go 3-1 just to get to a point where they have a respectable bowl. There's a lot of talk right now about where they would be if you're into that stuff, prognostication over bowls. One side has Purdue going back to Music City, which I don't think they would do that again just because they've been so many times the last few years. Another one has them going to the Relia something, which is the old Outback. It really doesn't matter, though, because if you don't win this week, it makes that Illinois game even tougher. It makes the Illinois game, of course, more important for the battle for the West. So the whole thing, let's get back to the Bromvember discussion. Bromvember, during Brom's years coaching, he's 10-6. That's pretty good. It's not the dominance that I think maybe many of us think about. Part of that is because those middle 2 years were just very pedestrian. But that's one thing I wanted to look at. I also want to look at how is Purdue coming off the bye versus Brom. Well, in 2017, they beat Minnesota. That was a big one. It was an early in the season bye. In 2018, they beat Illinois badly, beat them like a drum. In 2019, they lost to Wisconsin. It was late in the season, very late by, I think it was either right before November or in November. It was right before November. And then in 21, of course, they beat Iowa, highly ranked at home. A lot of people use the word stunned. They beat Iowa pretty well. Iowa has plenty of reason to be very motivated coming to this one. So off the bye week under Brom, Purdue's 3-1. That's pretty darn good. I think he's good at preparing teams. This is a little bit different year because injuries are such a big deal right now to Purdue. The question is, how healthy are they getting in these 2 weeks? Guys like Charlie Jones, how is he going to feel? How close to 100% will he be? The last thing I wanted to look at in the longer term, the overarching theme was, of course, Purdue versus Iowa during the Brom era. Purdue is 4-1 versus Iowa. If you count 2020, let's wipe it off the record since we did with all the other stats there. Purdue is 3-1 versus Iowa, if you look at it that way. And all those things point to reasons to be somewhat confident as Purdue fans coming in here, but there are a lot of things that can equalize that very quickly. The rain is one. Those injuries are another. And just overall, is Aiden O'Connell going to be back to what we're accustomed to seeing him play? I keep thinking that O'Connell and Purdue's offense is going to put together one of these games where it all comes together and he gets a 500-yard passing game. Part of the matchups have been really tough on O'Connell, but the other thing is he really hadn't played the way I think he thought he was going to play at this point, up to this point in the season. The Wisconsin game has a pretty bad taste in everybody's mouth, but specifically for O'Connell, that pick six was costly. Sure, he had 300-plus yards passing, but still, he's not completing passes the way he did last year. Obviously, losing David Bell has been a big deal because Bell was so good at finding the soft spot in a zone, and Jones has done a decent job at that. But getting one more receiver back might be a much bigger deal than we can even imagine if it's Brock Thompson. So if Brock Thompson is healthy this week, that'd be great. Of course, Yassine will be back again. Hopefully, he's got a better grasp on the playbook because it looked like on at least one play that he was targeted versus I think it was 2 games ago. He turned the wrong way. He and O'Connell were not on the same page, so that's a big deal. That's about all the analysis I have. We don't have a ton of people live here. Ted Berkey's here, says this game is scaring me more. The more I think about it, I think Iowa will dictate the flow of it with their defense, but we will still be favored. I think Purdue was favored by 4.5 points last time I checked. What they say the standard bump for teams that are even is three points if you're at home. So pretty even game in spite of Purdue having a good offense. I think Iowa's defense can really, really change the way the game's played. And if you look at my son has this hobby. He'll look at drive summaries. And if you look at a lot of the Iowa games, it'll be punt, 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 fumble, punt, punt. Not just them, but them and their opponent. Neither team really getting much traction. That plus the rain literally taking away traction. That's not a very good formula for success for this Purdue team. Ted Berkey also says 2019 was full of injuries, not an excuse, but should be taken into account. I agree. But we tend to, as Purdue fans, kind of I don't want to say make excuses about 2019. It's still on the books, right? Still counted. Purdue had tons of injuries. Obviously, losing your two top quarterbacks is a big deal. By the end of the season, they'd figure some things out with O'Connell. But yeah, injuries did play a part in that game. But it's still a season. It's still football. Injuries are part of the deal. This is what we've talked about. We thought this year Purdue's depth would help them as injuries mounted, as they do for every team around this time of year. And we're getting a chance to see if see a proof of that, see if it's actually working. Who knows? But this Iowa team is a test. There's no doubt their record isn't as much of an indicator how good of a team they are to me as they really are. I think Iowa's a little bit better. Their schedule was front loaded. They played some really tough teams, and they're in the situation they're fighting for a bowl. So not a great place for Purdue to be in, playing a desperate team or a somewhat desperate team. So that's about all I've got for you today. I'm going to have some thoughts on tonight's exhibition. Purdue plays Truman, formerly Truman State, I believe. And that'll be interesting to be there. I'm looking forward to it. Somebody said this is a sellout, which is very unusual for an exhibition game, but I'm glad I'm going to be in the house for that. I'll have some thoughts for you guys either Thursday or Friday on a QuickCast. That, and I want to talk a little bit about that Cincinnati scrimmage, how Purdue's basketball team has looked to the media and to Coach Painter, and give you a little bit of opinion on my own after I look at it myself. So that's about it. Hope your afternoon is good. Have a great day. God bless you. We'll see you soon.